in my face with a brick and all these black men just watch.
That's Rhoda Osmond. She's known virally as Brick Lady, and a Harris County jury has just found her guilty of theft by deception.
What have I ever done to anybody in my life to deserve this?
Back in 2023, she went viral when she made claims online that a man threw a brick at her head because she wouldn't give him her phone number.
This was a well thought of plan, a diabolical plan.
That's Olin Douglas. He's the man that was accused of throwing that brick, but he says that he got death threats after the video went viral. The Houston Police Department and Harris County District Attorney's Office investigated this case. They found that Rhoda Osmond created a fake GoFundMe to profit off of this, about $42,000. When the jury convicted her, the judge had to tell her to calm down in the courtroom several times. The judge then sentenced her to 10 years of probation, and some of the conditions that she'll have to follow: first, she'll have to serve 90 days in jail. She'll also have to pay full restitution and then go to inpatient substance abuse treatment. But one of the biggest conditions of probation, the judge ordered 10 years of no using social media.
So this is probably one of the first times I'm hearing about someone being banned on social media for just their sort of incidents using this, because I think now it's becoming more and more of a thing that people understand the value and the way you can make money, and just sort of fitting what happened here. And I want to focus on not just, okay, we've taken something that was usually, or 5-10 years ago would have just been looked at, oh, okay, maybe this happened, maybe it didn't, maybe it was a stunt, maybe it wasn't, and we would have moved on our lives. But now you introduce GoFundMe and the power of galvanizing so much support and money in the place that it bears looking at from larger society. But the thing that I want to focus on is the way this became such a divisive lightning rod, from what she said and how we immediately thought the worst of men, specifically black men, but we can keep it as men so we can include as many people into this. Coming off a season, right? A growing, elongating season, just about believe all women. And before we continue, and before that, we just want to say this is not saying that we're not here to blame victims. We don't want to dissuade people from coming forward that have actually been victims of anything. What we're trying to look at is how social media, the court of public opinion, can easily start and sway so many neutral parties or parties that were completely unheard of. It's the power of media, but democratized. It's in everyone's hands to say their opinion, and then for someone else to, at times it seems, avoid critical thinking and simply agree and simply go forward and say, yeah, I agree with that. We don't look at facts, or I don't think it's not that we don't look at facts. They just become less important when a game of telephone continues on. Things are left out, and then those things that are left out are repeated as the whole story. It's very rare do we get to see something that a lot of us questioned and said, that doesn't really line up with what makes sense. That doesn't really line up with my lived experience, and saying, wow, I'm just sort of curious and questioning what happened here, and would love to just sort of sit on the sidelines to find out more information. One of the things that people that were trained in the medical field, the medical staff, seeing the way the quote unquote bruising formed on her face, and it said that's not indicative of sort of how it normally looks, how it normally happens. I think later on it came out, or there was an accusation that it was saline. So the injection of saline to cause, to create that effect. More and more to the point, even after this, she took advantage of that fame and went on podcasts. And I think even I saw another thing with her, maybe even something like 2 months ago, right? So, Rhoda Osmond has been, her name has been implanted by a brick lady, and that became the moniker that she was known by. That people took that and said, yes, this is your claim to fame. And she rose and she took that and tried to monetize some parts of her life off that. The GoFundMe, I think, is what helped seal that deal, because it brought attention, and they were able to label that as theft. But by no means is that the only time people have used GoFundMe to steal, and to steal to the tunes of more than something like 42,000. There's some very egregious amounts. But again, the focus on this is how, because we have such a poor image, poor understanding, or poor thought pattern of men, black men, that when something like this came out, it was very easy for people to jump on. Very easy. And to this day, even though she has been found guilty in court, some of those same supporters of her still profess that, she's innocent and this is actually what happened, even as the story changed multiple times. Because maybe it's inherent in you and it makes you believe or supports your belief that these men are no good, that these men are the bad ones, the perpetrators, the constant sort of drugs of society. So when you have this thing that feels like supporting evidence, you latch on to it. And especially when you attach a voice to something like that very early on, it becomes somehow nearly impossible to say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I got that wrong. Full stop. I got that wrong. Very rarely do we see people come on here and say, "Oh, I needed to be more educated about that before I had a fully formed opinion." And to me, that's growth. What we don't have is that in larger society when it comes down to men. Bashing men or misandry has become so popularized it's hard for people even to see because that feels like just a normal course. When creators jump on here, and there's male and female, and say, yo, I hate men. Men are worse. Men are no good. Men are the plague on society. I hate men. We don't look at that. The algorithms don't flag that and say, you shouldn't be saying that. Or this is labeled as hate speech. Or it doesn't do any of that. It becomes normalized. So it becomes hard for men to understand why, on one hand, and this is a lack of nuance on our part as a society, we'll listen to what we're consuming and say, there's evidence that we're not wanted, we're not cared about, we're not loved, and we'll ignore all the actual evidence that we are, and we'll take that and feel like we should not be participants in society, that we're regulated to a lower class. So we sort of pull back and find other purposes in life, which I think is good. But we're missing out on very real relationships with women that never really adhere to any of this. We're all riding the same wave, but we're looking at different points in the horizon. So everything looks a little different, a little the same. We know we're moving. We know we don't feel like we have any control as this pushes us forward. I think this is a great example of when where society should start finding itself, that just because you make a claim and you use a group that's constantly being scapegoated for the ills of the world doesn't mean that it's 100% true. Doesn't mean that you have to now do the same and keep on pushing and believing, yes, this has to be the truth. Because I've had bad experiences with men, and this is confirmation bias. This makes me feel good about how I feel about men, so it has to be true. Doesn't. It often isn't. And what they used to say when the newspaper was popular, the headline is on the front page, the retraction was page 13. You never really see it. Even this story with Rod Osmond, the being found guilty, that's not going viral. This isn't being pushed in all the spaces like her first video was. And who determines the reality is going to be us and what we consume and then what we repost and what we continue to push. The algorithm is really just a reflection of us. And if we don't really care about a woman being found guilty after accusing men of of a heinous act, and then simply not caring anything about her and how women are dealt with, especially black women, if we're not pushing it, the algorithm won't. That's really just a reflection of us. So if you think I missed something, let me know. If you have something to add to it, again, hit the comments. If you see videos on your screen, take a look, see what you might like. Let me know your thoughts on those as well. And if you're hearing my voice right now, you haven't subscribed, killing me. All right, I'll see you guys on the next one.